Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Prabhupada Disciples Association. And we are an organization devoted to the reading of the original unedited books by His Divine Grace as part of our weekly sadhana program. Because Krishna Consciousness is a process based on hearing and chanting. And our speaker for the classes, His Grace Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu, describes the classes as readings and discussions, because the most potent speaker is His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda, who lives in sound. This is a yoga process. This is not a mechanical hatha yoga system where you're trying to control your breathing and your exercises to fix the mind. The process is based on hearing the transcendental messages, which are like a window into the spiritual sky. This process is the recommended process for devotees in the Kali Yuga. This is the way to get out of this material world. And so we call it a sadhana program at our group sessions. And they're on Wednesdays at 8 p.m., the Chaitanya Charitamrita class, which is very enlivening. And equally enlivening, the Saturday morning Bhagavad-gītā class and Sunday morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. And we're reading word for word every bit of information that Prabhupada is delivering to us in his historic work to spread the Krishna consciousness globally. So we encourage you to continue on with us weekly and carefully study the books in association with devotees. Now, just before we go ahead and continue our reading of the diary of Srila Prabhupada, which is so enlightening, and many of you don't have copies of this diary. I was fortunate to get these from Gargamuni Prabhu and Brahmananda Prabhu when they were visiting me in Hamilton in the 90s. And they had these books and we got them. And now they're a treasure house of information into the life of our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, who reveals his daily activities on how he was progressing the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya in the early years. Invaluable information, and we're documenting them on our classes, which are on Krishna Consciousness Movement YouTube channel. So if you're missing any of the classes, you can go on YouTube and see them. I think we're close to 125 classes now for people to do reference. And remember this, it's very important to understand this point I'm going to make right now, that association with devotees is also very valuable. We are associating with each other based on our understanding of our relationship with our spiritual master, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda. And the fact of the matter is, Prabhupada set up the movement in such a way that everyone could come and associate with devotees and hear the messages from the pure devotee, and in this way make advancement in Krishna consciousness. So you have to understand that all of these elements are important for your own personal spiritual development. And those people that are narcissistic, that are only interested in themselves, They're only interested in their own particular purpose in this process will have more difficulty making advancement than those that come together with like-minded devotees who are serious about this process and learn Krishna consciousness together. So we're going to carry on today. I'm so looking forward to the Bhagavad-gītā session and tomorrow's Bhagavatam session myself personally. I just love to hear, and I'm sure all of you do too. Here is the beginning. The beginning. It's not who starts the race, Prabhupada would say, it's who ends the race. So keep going, don't stop, never give up. Keep going. And here we go, Prabhupada, on March 11th, 1966. So, Friday, March 11th, 1966. Sunrise 6:21, sunset 600, 6 o'clock in the evening. Moonrise Panchami. Doctor asked me to take some food when I go to Monroe tomorrow. I went to see the Paragon Book Gallery. There was some mistake. Later on, the clerk showed me one set on the lower shelf. This makes the whole thing correct. 9 set up, 1 set down, total 10 sets, excuse me. Add 35 new sets, total 45 sets. Transfer to old stock, 25 sets. Balance, 20 sets. Taken today, 4 sets. Balance, 16 sets, new stock. Posted letter to them all in detail. These 16 sets new I shall take at a time when I need them. Expenditures, bus fare, 30 cents. Post 5-cent book, $1. Subtotal, $130. Income contribution, $2. So net profit, this is a very simple income and expense sheet here Prabhupada's doing. Awesome. Absolutely awesome. That would be 70 cents. One letter to Tirtha Maharaj in reply to his letter of 22/266, so February 22nd. So he's constantly in touch with his godbrothers in India, trying to invoke their enthusiasm to join him and help him in spreading Krishna consciousness in the Western world. Unfortunately, he got no help. One letter sent to Mrs. Sally Argawal in reply to her letter of 6/3/66. Saturday, March 12th. Sorry about that. Anyway, I'll read forward. Hopefully you can see it. Sunrise 6:19 a.m., sunset 6:01 p.m. Moonrise 1 a.m. Sasti. I was to go to Monroe, but Yolanda did not go, so I could not go there. Food made for Dr. Mishra was partially distributed to Cohen and Yolanda. 2 parta left for him. So that's very meticulous. Cohen is prepared to go to California on a half-tape recorder prepared for him. He bought a pad for sitting. He assured the maintenance of rent of my room. No income and no expenditure. And on Monday, here we have Sunday, March 13th, sunrise 6:17 a.m., sunset 6:30 p.m., moonrise 1:12 a.m., Saptami. The young lady who was to come and see me today did not turn up in the evening. 2 ladies and Mr. Schussman came. There was some discussions. One of the ladies brought bread for me, no income, and no expenditure. And then Monday, March 14th, 1966, going back in time. Oh, I appeared to have not given that. So I'll wait till tomorrow, and I'll post that again, and we can read along. So we're going to move forward with the chanting of Jaya Radha Madhava, the bhajan by Srila Prabhupada before all the classes. And then we'll have our reading and discussion. If you have any questions after the reading, then you can pose them by putting your hand up with using the prompt on the Zoom call, and we'll try to recognize it and answer your questions and move forward in the process of Shravanam Kirtanam in the Prabhupada Disciples Association. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Yaśodā-nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yaśodā-nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yaśodā-nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yaśodā-nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Muspa Paramahansa Parivrajaka-ācārya Sthitare Smadhati-siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava ki jai Nāma-ācārya Sri Haridas Thakur ki jai Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sam Khand Radha Khand Girivardhan ki jai Vrindavan Dham ki jai Navadvip Dham ki jai Ganga Mai की जाए जमुना माई की जाए गुरु द्वारका धाम की जाए स्वामी तो भक्तविंद की जाए ऑल ग्लोरी टू देयर समझ ऑल ग्लोरी टू देयर समझ थैंक यू वेरी मच
Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagar Jatam Sahaguna Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha E Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpati Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostuti Tapta Kanchana Ghurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Aripriye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaham Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Welcome everyone to this reading and discussion on Bhagavad-gītā As It Is. We are reading from the 1972 Macmillan edition, the non-edited, non-adulterated version. Today we'll be reading from chapter number 8, text number 22 and 23, and probably 24 as well. All purports, translations, and synonyms by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda, Founder-Ācārya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, also known as the Krishna Consciousness Movement. Text 22. Purushaha saparaparta bhaktyalabhyastvananyaya yasyantastani bhutani yena sarvamidam tatam. Purushaha, the Supreme Personality. Sa-i, Paraha, the Supreme, than whom no one is greater. Parta, O son of Prita, Bhaktya, by devotional service. Labhyaha, can be achieved. To, but, Ananyaya, unalloyed, undeviating devotion. Yasya, his. Antastani, within. Bhutani, all this material manifestation. Yena, by whom. Sarvam, all. Idam, whatever we can see. Tatam, distributed. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is greater than all, is attainable by unalloyed devotion. Although he is present in his abode, he is all-pervading, and everything is situated within him. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It is here clearly stated that the supreme destination from which there is no return is the abode of Krishna, the Supreme Person. The Brahma Samhita described this supreme abode as Ananda Chinmaya Rasa, a place where everything is full of spiritual bliss. Whatever variegatedness is manifest, there is all of the quality of spiritual bliss. There is nothing material. All variegatedness is expanded as the spiritual expansion of the Supreme Godhead Himself, for the manifestation there is totally of the spiritual energy, as explained in chapter 7. As far as this material world is concerned, although the Lord is always in His supreme abode, He is nonetheless all-pervading by His material energy. So by His spiritual and material energies, He is present everywhere, both in the material and in the spiritual universes. Yasyantastani means that everything is sustained by Him, whether it be spiritual or material energy. It is clearly stated here that only by bhakti or devotional service can one enter into the Vaikuntha, spiritual planetary system. In all the Vaikunthas, there is only one Supreme Godhead, Krishna, who has expanded Himself into millions and millions of plenary expansions. These plenary expansions are four-armed, and they preside over the innumerable spiritual planets. They are known by a variety of names: Purushottama, Trivikrama, Keshava, Madhava, Aniruddha, Rishikesha, Sankarsana, Pradyumna, Sridhara, Vasudeva, Damodara, Janardana, Narayana, Vamana, Padmanabha, etc. These plenary expansions are likened unto the leaves of a tree, and the main tree is likened to Krishna. Krishna, dwelling in Goloka Vrindavana, His supreme abode, systematically conducts all affairs of both universes, material and spiritual, without a flaw, by power of His all-pervasiveness. Text 23. Yatra kale tvanavrittim avrittim cheva yoginaha prayata yantitam kalam vakshyame bharatarshabha. Yatra, in that, kale, time, to, but, anavrittim, no return, avrittim, return, cha, also, eva, certainly, yoginaha, of different kinds of mystics, prayataha, one who goes, yanti, departs, tam, that, kalam, time, Bhakshyami, describing, Bharatarshaba, O best of the Bharatas. Translation. O best of the Bharatas, I shall now explain to you the different times at which, passing away from this world, one does or does not come back. Purport. The unalloyed devotees of the Supreme Lord who are totally surrendered souls do not care when they leave their bodies or by what method. They leave everything in Krishna's hands and so easily and happily return to Godhead. But those who are not unalloyed devotees and who depend instead on such methods of spiritual realization as karma yoga, jnana yoga, hatha yoga, etc., must leave the body at a suitable time and thereby be assured whether or not they will return to the world of birth and death. If the yogi is perfect, he can select the time and place for leaving this material world. But if he is not so perfect, then he has to leave at nature's will. the most suitable time to leave the body and not return is being explained by the Lord in these verses. According to Acharya Baladeva Vidyabhushana, the Sanskrit word kala used herein refers to the presiding deity of time. Text 24. Agnir Jyotihi Raha Shuklaha Sanmasa Uttarayanam Tatar Prayati Gachanti Brahma Vido Jana Agni, fire, Jyotihi, light, Aha, day, Shuklaha, white, Shatmasa, 6 months, Uttarayanam, when the sun passes on the northern side, Tatra, there, Prayataha, one who goes, Gachanti, passes away, Brahma, the Absolute, Brahmavidaha, one who knows the Absolute, Janaha, person. Translation: those who know the Supreme Brahman pass away from the world during the influence of the fiery God, in the light, at an inauspicious moment, during the fortnight of the moon and the 6 months, when the sun travels in the north. Purport: when fire, light, day, and moon are mentioned, it is to be understood that over all of them, there are various presiding deities who make arrangements for the passage of the soul. At the time of death, the jiva sets forth on the path to a new life. If one leaves the body at the time designated above, either accidentally or by arrangement, it is possible for him to attain the impersonal Brahmajyoti. Mystics who are advanced in yoga practice can arrange the time and place to leave the body. Others have no control. If by accident they leave at an auspicious moment, then they will not return to the cycle of birth and death. But if not, then there's every possibility that they will have to return. However, for the pure devotee in Krishna consciousness, there is no fear of returning, whether he leaves the body at an auspicious or inauspicious moment, by accident or arrangement. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnanam Janashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Bhakti Siddhanta Shishyaya Bhaktivedanta Namine Prasannaya Prashantaya Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Bhagavad-vandanam khadyam Guru Vandana Purvakam Kshiram Sharkara Yuktam Kadatehi Visheshataha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrindam Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we are reaching, in the Bhagavad-gītā readings here, a very important section. We were reading previously, in the previous verses, about the life of Lord Brahma, the demigod in charge of creating the universe. who lives for a very long duration of life and what happens to him at the end of his life. In other words, everyone in the material world is subject to birth and death. The problem of jara mrityu, janma mrityu jara vyadi, or birth, death, old age, and disease affects everyone in the material world. Even the demigods and great rishis, great sages on the higher planets. We see sometimes in the news cycles, various people are talking about UFOs, unidentified flying objects, and whether or not there are living beings in other parts of the universe. Well, the Bhagavad-gītā gives us very nice information about that. There is. But it cannot be perceived by our blunt material senses. One has to hear from the self-realized souls, from the liberated souls, and from Krishna himself, the supreme authority, the speaker of Bhagavad-gītā. We have seen in some of the previous verses, in text number 20, for example, where Lord Krishna is explaining, Parastasmat tu bhavanyo vyakto vyaktat sanatanaha yah sasarveshu bhuteshu nashyatsu navinashyati. Yet there is another nature which is eternal and is transcendental to this manifested and unmanifested matter. It is supreme and is never annihilated. When all in this world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. Now we should know from the authority of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a few places in the universe that will not be destroyed. One of them is Dhruvaloka, the pole star. It is a special planet protected by Krishna. It is not destroyed. Another one, Shvetadvip, where Lord Vishnu resides. It will not be destroyed. But everything else in the material world, at the end of the cosmic cycle, will be destroyed. Because everything here is temporary. We have seen in the Bhagavad-gītā how Lord Krishna describes how this world is dukkhalayam asashvatam. Dukkhalayam means it is a place of miseries, and it is temporary. Everywhere in the world you can see there are medical institutions, hospitals, different arrangements for caring for disease, for suffering, trying to alleviate old age, because it is the tendency of human beings not to die. Everyone wants to live. How many times do we hear stories of somebody who is stranded at sea? They will send helicopters, they will send rescue, they will send some search and rescue teams to try to bring the distressed person to safety. Here in California, there are many mountains. And periodically we see somebody who doesn't drive very carefully, who doesn't pay attention, will go over a cliff or a canyon. And they will send people by helicopter or by some mechanical means down the canyon to try to save the person. Why? Because they understand the importance of life. But even though there are so many arrangements, medical arrangements, hospital, clinics, physicians, nurses, no one can live permanently here. But Krishna is giving a solution here. How to live permanently. How to solve the problems of this dukkhalayam asashvatam. Prabhupada explains Krishna's superior spiritual energy is transcendental and eternal. It is beyond all the changes of material nature, which is manifest and unmanifested, annihilated during the days and nights of Brahma. Krishna's superior energy is completely opposite in quality to material nature. We see in text 21, Krishna explains his supreme abode. Because naturally somebody say, well, if there is suffering here, if there's difficulty here in the world, not everything is temporary, is there not something better? Is there a place where this suffering and this temporary problem is not there? And Krishna says, yes, it is. In text 21, that supreme abode is called unmanifested and infallible. Avyakta akshara ityuktas. And it is the supreme destination. Tamahu paramam gatim. When one goes there, he never comes back. Yam prapyana nivartante tadhama paramam mama. Very important. These two Sanskrit lines explain the benefit of practicing bhakti yoga, practicing this loving devotional service to God, to Krishna. That when one goes back to the spiritual world, there is no more suffering. When he goes back over there, there is no more birth, no more death, no more old age, no more disease. Just the other day, I had to go for some medical appointment. I went there, and in the lobby, there was an elderly person. And you could tell, just looking at the person, that they were experiencing a lot of suffering. A lot of suffering. Why? Why is the person suffering? Why is anybody suffering? Because we have this material body. You cannot stop suffering as long as you have a material body. It doesn't matter how rich one may be, how beautiful one may be, how strong one may be. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter which country, which family, which society, whether one is in a human society, an animal society, or in demigod society. There is always suffering in this world. Always. So the intelligent person will ask how to solve that suffering. That solution is given by the Lord himself in Bhagavad-gītā. He describes, for example, in the purport of text 21, what is that supreme abode? The supreme abode of the personality of Godhead Krishna is described in the Brahma Samhita as Chintamani Dhamma, a place where all desires are fulfilled. The supreme abode of Lord Krishna, known as Goloka Vrindavana, is full of palaces made of touchstone. There are also trees which are called desire trees that supply any type of eatable upon demand. And there are cows known as Surabhi cows, which supply a limitless supply of milk. In this abode, the Lord is served by hundreds of thousands of goddesses of fortune, Lakshmis, and he is called Govinda, the primal Lord and the cause of all causes. What Srila Prabhupada is describing here is from the Brahma Samhita, the 5th chapter, the 29th verse. Chintamani prakara sadmasu kalpabriksha lakshavriteshu surabhirabi palayantam lakshmi sahasrashata sambrahma sevyamanam govindam adipurusham tamaham bhajami. This is the description of the spiritual world, the kingdom of God, where there is no more suffering, no more anxiety, all of one's desires are fulfilled, and one will have a suitable body to associate with Krishna, to serve Krishna. Very important point. We see in the Bhagavad-gītā how Srila Prabhupada is describing how to reach that transcendental abode. When we carefully study every verse, every purport, every sentence, everything is given there. In text number 22, Prabhupada is describing that supreme destination from which there is no return is the abode of Krishna, the Supreme Person. The Brahma Samhita described this supreme abode as Ananda Chinmaya Rasa, a place where everything is full of spiritual bliss. Whatever variegatedness is manifest, there is all of the quality of spiritual bliss. There is nothing material. All variegatedness is expended as the spiritual expansion of the Supreme Godhead Himself. For the manifestation there is totally of the spiritual energy, as explained in chapter 7. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada describes in one purport that when devotees do deity worship and worship the deity, they should sing the Purusha Sukta, which is a Vedic hymn in the different Vedas, specifically in the Rig Veda and Taittiriya Veda, Shukla Yajur Veda, which describe the position of the spiritual world and how the material world is created and how to return back there. It is described by knowing that personality, tam eva viditvati mrityumeti, nanya panta vidyati anaya. There is no other way of reaching the spiritual world by understanding the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when understands that, he doesn't come back here. Same instruction which is given in Bhagavad-gītā, chapter 4, text 9. Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvatah tyaktva deham punara janma neti mam iti so Arjuna. One who understands, one who knows the transcendental nature of my activity. Janma karma chame divyam. One who understands this does not come back to this material world. The same principle is explained so many places in Bhagavad-gītā. It is very important. We see here in text number 22 in the last paragraph, Srila Prabhupada is explaining the position in the Vaikuntha planets. It is clearly stated here that only by bhakti or devotional service can one enter into the Vaikuntha spiritual planetary system. In all the Vaikunthas, there is only one Supreme Godhead Krishna, who has expanded himself into millions and millions of plenary expansions. These plenary expansions are four-armed, and they preside over the innumerable spiritual planets. They are known by a variety of names. So in this way, Srila Prabhupada is revealing, explaining, what is the position when a devotee reaches the spiritual world. This is a very, very important information, very valuable information. Srila Prabhupada has often described how he has given everything in his books. And if anyone has any questions, they can read his books and understand everything. When the Nectar of Devotion came out in Los Angeles, California, in July of 1970, many devotees who took a look at this book, they realized that there was a tremendous amount of information in that book. As everyone knows, Nectar of Devotion is the English translation of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of Rupa Goswami, the topmost summary of the science of bhakti by the Acharya of the Gaudiya Sampradaya, Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupāda. So many devotees were asking, they went to Srila Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, this book looks sometimes difficult to understand. It seems complicated. Prabhupada's reply was, you read it again. And devotees said, well, even if we read it again, sometimes there are places where, especially in the later part of the book, which it's very difficult to comprehend. Prabhupada said, if you read it again and again, you will understand. So this is the whole idea of reading and discussion. You read it, and if you do not understand it, read it again. Then try to go into a deeper study, analytical study. Every sentence, every word has a meaning. when Srila Prabhupada asked me in 1977, how do you teach the children in the Gurukul? And I described to Srila Prabhupada how we systematically study the Sanskrit verse in the Bhagavad-gītā, Ishopanishad, Bhagavatam. We read the word for word that you have given. We read the translation. And then we read the purport and start to analyze the purport by making notations of any Sanskrit word or Bengali word or any verses cited, any examples or analogies, making a list of all the major points in the purport and drawing up a list of questions. And Prabhupada says, yes, that is a very good system. And Prabhupada pointed out, if something is unclear, read it again. Everything is explained in my books. Very important point. Very important point, because sometimes the tendency of devotees is to go outside of the writings of Srila Prabhupada, to go beyond Srila Prabhupada. Many devotees are familiar with one individual who went to the Western countries from a neo-mat in northern India, claiming that Prabhupada just gave the basics. And he was going to give the higher teaching, the Rasika teaching, the special teachings that Prabhupada had not given. That is complete nonsense. Not only is it disrespectful to Srila Prabhupada, it shows that the person has never read Srila Prabhupada's books and was not familiar with Prabhupada's teachings. Otherwise, nobody would make such a nonsensical, offensive statement. One has to remember, one cannot insult the Acharya. The Sampradaya Acharya is to be respected in all circumstances. One should never disrespect the Acharya. Very important point. If one becomes disrespectful to the Acharya, then his spiritual life is finished. Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasado. Yasya aprasadat nagati kutopi. If one pleases the Acharya, he pleases Krishna. If one disrespects the Acharya and displeases the Acharya, then there's no mercy. One has to be very, very careful. Very careful. One should never become arrogant, thinking he knows better than the Acharya, or he's going to go beyond the teachings of the Acharya. Very important point. So we will open up the discussion. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. That was excellent discussion so far on our verses from the Bhagavad-gītā, attaining the supreme. Because the living entity has all kinds of questions. Who are we? How did we get here? Where am I going? The answers are given in the Shastra. If a person is on the street, he doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know where he is going, what is his purpose. Prabhupada gives us that example, Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu, of someone who's crazy. And in this world, most people have no answers to these questions. And overall, this has been our experience over 55 years, that most people are completely insane. This is going on, and it's demonstrated in the society. So the meaning of this chapter is attaining the supreme. People are misidentifying themselves with the body. Someone sent me a recent, this morning, a video of Mark Wahlberg, who I work with, his group in a sense. And Mark is referring to his state of mind after his workout and his current state based on his state of his body. He goes, in the video, he goes, I feel great. That was ringing out in my ear. What is the I? Well, it was his physical state of being. This is a misidentification with the self, with the body. Let's refer to the Chaitanya Charitamrita this morning in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya to Rupa Goswami. What is the actual identity of the living entity? If we could please go to Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 19, text 138. Madhya Lila, chapter 19, text 138. Yes, go down a bit. We'll go right to the verse. In this universe, there are limitless living entities in 8,400,000 species, and all are wandering within this universe. Text 139. Just straight to the English, please. The length and breadth of the living entity is described as 1/10,000th of the tip of the hair. That's our identity. This is the original subtle nature of the living entity. Text 140. If we divide the tip of a hair into 100 parts and then take one of these parts and divide it again into 100 parts, that very fine division is the size of but one of the numerous living entities. They are all chit-kana, particles of spirit, not matter. This is our identity, everyone. Text 141. If we divide the tip of a hair into 100 parts and then take one part and divide this into another 100 parts, that 10,000th part of the dimension of the living entity, this is the verdict of the chief Vedic mantras. Stunning. We hear this, but we do not accept it. That's the problem. I know all of us know this, but we think for some other reason we're not this, the spirit soul. Text 142. Among minute particles, I am the living entity. Purport. The living entity is one with different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A spirit soul, the living entity, is one in quality with the Supreme Lord. However, the Supreme Lord is bigger than the biggest, and the living entity is the smallest of the small. This quote is the third pada of a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. So we'll just carry on a little bit more because this is a discussion. We're getting the understanding from Lord Chaitanya himself of who we are and not misidentifying with this material body and this material state of mind that all of us are in. Text 143. O Lord, although the living entities have accepted material bodies, who have accepted are spiritual and unlimited in number, if they were all pervading, there would be no question of their being under your control. If they are accepted, however, as particles of the eternally existing spiritual entity as part of you, you are the supreme spiritual whole. We must conclude that they are always under your control. No question. If the living entities are simply satisfied with being identified with you as spiritual particles, then they will be happy being controllers of so many things. The conclusion that the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are one and the same is a faulty conclusion. It is not a fact. The unlimited living entities can be divided into two divisions, those that can move and those that cannot move. Among living entities that can move, there are birds, aquatics, and animals. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving to all of us here in this morning's class clear instructions on how the living entities live under different conditions. There are trees, plants, and stones that cannot move, but still they must be considered living entities or spiritual sparks. The soul is present in bodies like those of trees, plants, and stones. They are all living entities. Among moving living entities such as birds, aquatics, and animals, the same spiritual spark is there. I just wanted to refer. One of the members of the ashram yesterday found a bird that could not fly, a robin, outside on our property. And he brought it in and kept it in the sunroom here. And he was feeding the bird, and the bird became his friend. And when he would go into the room, last night he went into the room, the bird came over to him and was chirping, "Oh, food, food, chirp, chirp." And Walter was petting the bird, and the bird had become his friend. And then this morning, the bird passed away. So we can see just by that simple example how consciousness pervades the bodies of all living entities. But there are different facilities in the different bodies for the living entity to learn and become. And in the human form of life, we're very gifted because we have superior intelligence and an ability to understand who we are. And this is the process of bhakti yoga that we are gifted to have in association with a self-realized soul, Srila Prabhupada. As stated herein, there are living entities that can fly, swim, and walk. We must also conclude that there are living entities that can move within fire and ether. Living entities have different material bodies composed of earth, water, air, fire, and ether. The words Tara mean, Madhya mean that within this universe, the entire material universe is composed of 5 material elements. It is not true that the living entities reside only within this planet and not within others. So I'll just move down here. The individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble and can neither be burned nor dried. He's everlasting, all-pervading, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. So this is what we're learning, is who we are. Jivara Swarupa Hoy. We're the servants of Krishna. And the Bhagavad-gītā is meant to give us this understanding and allow us to, in association with the pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada, and his disciples, understand what to do with our time and how we can maximize this opportunity in this human form of life to get out of the entanglement of birth, death, disease, and old age and go back home, back to Godhead at the end of this life. Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu, if you could further comment, please.
Well, this is a very important point because we are reading Bhagavad-gītā.
Yes.
And we are discussing, the whole idea is to get a deeper understanding of the teachings of bhakti, as presented and given by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Just recently had a conversation with a devotee who was asking me, why is it that there seemed to be so much division and dissension amongst Krishna devotees? And my basic reply, well, those who are real devotees, who are seriously interested in following the teachings of Prabhupada, they don't have division because their aim is to follow Srila Prabhupada the way that he wants to be followed. In other words, Srila Prabhupada has given directions, instructions, orders. He has given plenty of instructions. If there is no personal motivation, if there is no personal agenda, if there's no personal political program, then it's not difficult to understand the philosophy. It's not like a complicated issue. It's not something that is difficult to comprehend. But the issue is, what is the level of maturity and the level of Krishna consciousness of people who are claiming that they follow Prabhupada? In other words, the reason there is division and dissension, Prabhupada explains in the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam in one purport, that dissension means that people are not strictly following the regulative principles. I spoke to one temple president recently, and he told me that he had a conversation with His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada in 1976 after the Mayapur festival, and Srila Prabhupada told him that 95% of the leaders in this movement do not follow the regulative principles. Srila Prabhupada was very concerned because this is the fundamental, this is the pillars of the practice of devotion, to follow the instructions of the spiritual master without personal motivation. And that is why we see that there are divisions. That is why we see that there are friction and sometimes discord amongst many devotees. The solution to that problem is to basically get very serious about the practice of chanting and properly following the principles. And one of the important principles is no speculation. When I first came to the movement in 1969, it was explained to me that no gambling also involves no mental speculation. We don't invent. One devotee named Sripati. Sripati was a very nice devotee. He was a very expert mridanga player and an amazing cook. He was a very good leader. And he explained to me one time, I was assisting him to clean some rice. And some grains of rice fell in the sink. So I tried to push him down the sink. He says, no, don't do that. He says, you should pick every grain of rice and bring it back and clean it properly. I said, well, why is that? Can't we just throw it? He said, because Prabhupada said that we should do that. And he says, we don't speculate. We don't engage in any mental speculation as a devotee. And this is a very important point because we see so many devotees, they chant, they seem to follow the principles, and then they come up with some speculative interpretation of this means this and this means that. This is all due to false ego. False ego, somebody thinking that they know so much, they're so educated, they're so intelligent, they're so knowledgeable, they're so senior devotee, this and that. No, simply we hear submissively from the Acharya. Acharya upasanam. This is a very important point. What we will do now is we will read from a class that Prabhupada gave in New York on November 18th, 1966, with regards to the verse Parastasmat tu bhavanyo. This was in New York on November 18, 1966. Srila Prabhupada. Parastasmat tu bhavanyo vyakto vyaktat sanatanaha yah sasarveshu bhuteshu nashyatsu na vinashyati. Now, this verse we have been discussing from the last day. There is another nature. Parastasmat tu bhavaha. Bhava means nature. And para means superior. So there is another superior nature. Avyaktaha avyaktat sanatanaha. Vyakta means what you see manifested. Now, this material universe you're seeing manifested. Practically not seeing, but at least at night, we can see how the stars are twinkling, so many planets, innumerable. This is manifested. And beyond that manifestation, there is covering of the universe, vyakta, avyakta. And beyond that avyakta, there is another material nature, or spiritual nature. So Krishna is pointing out that nature. Parastasmat tu bhavanyo vyakto vyaktat sanatanaha. Sanatana means eternal. This nature, this material nature, it has got its beginning and end. But that spiritual nature, that has no beginning and no end. How it is? You can understand by simple example. Just like this sky, and in some insignificant part of the sky, there is some cloud, and the cloud covers us. When there is cloud or snowfall, we see everything is covered. But that covering is only an insignificant part of the whole sky. That covering is not for the whole sky, because we're very minute, small, so a few hundred miles. If it is covered, this sky, we see that everything is covered. Similarly, this material sky is within the covering, with the covering of Mahatattva matter. And as this cloud, when it is clear, the original sky you can see. Similarly, this covering of material matter, when it begins, just like cloud as beginning and end. Similarly, this material nature as beginning and end. Just like your body, it has got its beginning and end simply for some time. We get our birth of this body, we stay for some time, it grows, it gives some byproducts, then it dwindles, then vanishes. These 6 transformations. So similarly, anything material, manifestation that you are seeing, observing, that is under these 6 kinds of transformation. So at the end, it will be vanquished. So Krishna says, Parastasmat tubhava anyo vyakto vyaktat sanatanaha. Beyond this vanquishing cloud-like material nature, there is another superior nature which is sanatana, eternal. It has no beginning, no end. In yasa sarveshu bhuteshu nasyatsu navinashyati. When this material manifestation will be annihilated, that will remain. Just like the cloud, when it is vanquished, when it is annihilated, the sky remains. Similarly, spiritual sky will remain. The material covering of the spiritual sky will be vanquished. This is called Gata Kasha, Potakasha. So there are many volumes of knowledge of this material sky and spiritual sky. In Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd Canto, you will find description of the spiritual sky, what nature it is, what kind of people remain there, what is their future, everything. Even we get information that in spiritual sky there's aeroplane, spiritual aeroplane in the spiritual sky. And the living entities, they are liberated. They travel on the spiritual sky on that plane. And it is so nice, just like lightning. The description is they travel just like lightning. So everything is there. This is only imitation. This material sky and everything, whatever you see, all imitation, shadow. It is shadow. Just like in cinematographic picture, you see the shadow of the real thing behind. Similarly, this is only shadow. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said, Janmadyasya yataha anvayaditaratas charti suabhignasvarat yata trisargu mrisha. This material world is a combination of matter. Just like you have seen a nice girl's doll in the showcase of the shopkeepers, exactly just like a nice, beautiful girl. But that is imitation. Imitation. Every sane man knows, oh, this is imitation. In this way, Prabhupada gives so many wonderful explanations of the difference between the material world and spiritual world. Very, very important lecture. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. In Hawaii, we have our god brother, Janas Priya Prabhu, who's a very sincere devotee of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda. And knowing our identity as spirit souls and servants of Srila Prabhupada, I wanted to ask him this question. How can we best use our time according to Srila Prabhupada's teachings to make advancement in spiritual life. Jonas Priya in Hawaii. I guess it appears to be there, but he's not there.
Srila Prabhupada, please accept my humble obeisance. If you got time, chant Hare. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Hello? Okay. Yeah, one sentence. If you got time, chant Hare Krishna. Which means we don't know when our time is to go. So I was on this walk in Mayapur, 1975. A bunch of devotees, Rameshwar was there, and Prabhupada is talking about the end, a big war was going to happen. And Rameshwar said, Srila Prabhupada, when they're dropping the bombs, are we going to be on the street distributing books? Prabhupada laughed. And Prabhupada said, you have to be enthusiastic, but not that much. And everybody just laughed. But then he got real serious. And he said, but, he says, we don't know when we're going to die. We may die today, we may die tomorrow. We may die next week, next month, maybe a few years. But he says, there's no better time to get ready to die than now. While you still have your senses, while you have the understanding, and you do it, it's an austerity. And it's amazing because people, so many yogis do so many severe austerities and this and that. And Prabhupada gave us the austerity to chant the holy name, to offer our food, read his books. Those are our austerities. I mean, that to me, that's amazing. That our austerities are actually nectarian activities. Although, like Prabhupada says, you know, it might taste like poison in the beginning, but it tastes like nectar in the end. So we have to persevere. We have to be enthusiastic. To chant around, and we have to read Prabhupada's books every day, whether, even if you think you're going to die, then what better time to read, right? If you're going to die, you die reading Prabhupada's books. So if we do that and we associate with the bodies, then we stand a way, way better opportunity of breaking out of this cycle of samsara. And in the process, we could perhaps pass on the seed of devotion that Prabhupada gave us to pass. How do we do that? Very simply, you carry small books, carry pamphlets, you go to a doctor appointment, you leave a little pamphlet or book in the bench. Or if you ride a bus, leave a book. Or the cashier always on the market said, so how's your day today so far? So they're asking us, we could tell them, oh, my day is blissful because I've been chanting Hare Krishna. And I think you should try it too, and you give them a card. There's so many ways. Some devotees think that, oh, I have to have this, I have to have that to preach. No. All we have to have is the desire. Just a simple desire. And those are our austerities. So we're very, very fortunate that Prabhupada gave us such austerities that actually make not only us happy, but the whole world happy. Hare Krishna.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your recollection of your association with Prabhupada. Actually, I was on that same walk with you when Prabhupada spoke about the possibility in the near future of there being a nuclear war, of course, which would disturb the balance of nature and our ability to live comfortably in this modern world. I see that we have Rathayatra Prabhu. I hope he's online with us to give us his insights on how he understands the best use of time according to Prabhupada's instructions to him. Rathayatra Prabhu, are you there? Okay, we'll see if he comes up with an opportunity to speak. Ron Singh in Sacramento. I see you're on the call. Good morning, Ron. How are you in Sacramento? I wanted to get your realizations on the best use of time while in the human form of life.
Srila Prabhupada has given the whole system, just like we discussed today. There's reading, there's chanting, there's audio, there's video, there's discussions, there's God brothers. So the whole program is there for like the Ishopanishad, it says this material world is complete. And with Srila Prabhupada's books, his audio, his video, human life is totally complete because we have the full facility to understand who is God, what is our relationship with God, and there's various living entities. So we should utilize time very wisely. Even if Prabhupada says that even if someone gets $1 billion, you cannot buy that time back. So we should constantly think about the mission and vision of Srila Prabhupada, execute our duty, whatever it may be, and then help others.
What's the best way to help others, Bhakta Ron?
Well, best way to help others is to teach them to chant Hare Krishna, give them one of Prabhupada's original books, invite them for prasadam. It's a systematic process, just like Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu said, but it starts with chanting. And then if they're very much inclined to chanting, then we can see, okay, there's a possibility that this person can understand Srila Prabhupada's books. Even if not that, we can invite them to our home, show them some nice pictures of Krishna, explain to them about the mission and vision of Srila Prabhupada, and get them attracted. So any sane person who sees the wonderful books, prasadam, they'll certainly be attracted. I think you have experience of that. You've been associated with various people. You have fed them prasadam, and they like it. They might not take it up wholeheartedly, but their process of reviving their consciousness has started by prasadam, by the books, by them associating with you.
Yes, I wanted to, if we could go to Chaitanya Charitamrita, text 147, on the chapter 19 of the Madhya Lila, chapter 19, 147. I wanted to refer to welfare work because people have this idea about welfare work, but real welfare work is to give people understanding of who they are. So among the followers of Vedic knowledge, most are following the process of fruitive activity between good and bad works. Out of many such sincere fruitive actors, there may be one who is actually wise. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur states that the word karma nishta refers to one who aspires to enjoy the results of his good work and pious activity. Some followers of Vedic principles offer everything to the absolute truth and do not aspire to enjoy the results of their pious actions. These are considered among the karma nishtas. Sometimes we see pious men earn money with great hardship and spend the money for some pious cause by opening public charities, schools, and hospitals. Whether one earns money for himself or for the public benefit, this is called karma nishta. Out of millions of karma nishtas, they may be one who is wise. Those who try to avoid fruitive activity and become silent in order to merge into the spiritual existence of the absolute truth are generally known as Gyanis, wise men. They are not interested in fruit of activity, but in merging into the Supreme. In either case, both are interested in personal benefit. The karmis are directly interested in personal benefit within the material world, and the Gyanis are interested in merging into the existence of the Supreme. The Gyanis maintain that fruit of activity is imperfect. For them, perfection is the cessation of work and merging into the Supreme existence. That is their goal in life. The Gyanis want to extinguish the distinction between knowledge, the knower, and the aim of knowledge. The philosophy is called monism or oneness and is characterized by spiritual science. So Prabhupada is explaining here about the proper use of money, time, and purpose. And the real purpose of the devotee, Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu, is to spread the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya. Prabhu, if you could further comment.
Well, I've seen that we have a question on the chat, a very important point that's been raised by Bhakta Hari Prasad Prabhu.
Yes.
He says, I wanted to ask some devotees why their temple is not strictly following Srila Prabhupada, even though they have accepted him as their spiritual master. They seem to be concocting festivals and events just to attract large crowds of people. How do I approach them and debate this matter in a non-offensive manner? Then we have a very nice comment from Bhaktin Yasmin Virani in Hamilton. It's very unfortunate. They have even stopped playing Govindam Adipurusham even when they opened the deity's curtains that first drew me to the temple. I don't know which temple she's referring to, but that's a very valid point. And next I dug up a letter where Srila Prabhupada, it's a letter to Sudama Maharaj in 1972, where Srila Prabhupada says, so far the roadshow in this yoga village are concerned, these things should be stopped. Simply perform our kirtan. If we divert our attention in this way, the whole thing would gradually deteriorate. He is going far away. All these things are nonsense invention. Such inventing spirit will ruin this movement. People may come to see, some will become devotees, but such devotees will not stay because they're attracted by some show and not by the real thing or spiritual life according to the standard of Lord Chaitanya. Our standard is to have kirtan, start temples. What is this roadshow and yoga village? It will be another hippie edition. Gradually, the Krishna conscious idea will evaporate. Another change, every day another change. Stop all this. Simply have kirtan, nothing else. Don't manufacture ideas. Then there was another letter also. This was a letter to a devotee named Dhruvananda. Dhruvananda wrote a letter asking Prabhupada questions about worshipping the deities. Srila Prabhupada said, you may dress Lord Chaitanya in the standard way. Main thing is do it nicely, don't make it funny. In your Western countries, Lord Chaitanya should be entirely covered. He should not appear bare-chested. Why you are pouring water over the head of Radha and Krishna deities? Big deities should not be baited in this way, using water or other things. Rather, they are baited daily by mantra. Do you not know these things? Under no circumstances shall we bait the Jagannath deities with anything water or liquid. They should be baited with mantra only. Now you're asking if Lord Jagannath carries flute. Why this nonsense question? You're asking me so many concoctions and manufactured nonsense. Don't bother my head in this way anymore. From now on, unless I order you do something change or in addition go on with the usual standard way. You manufacture ideas and then I have to waste my time. I've given you everything already. There is no need for you to add anything or change anything. Why you're asking these things? Who has given you such freedom? Pujari standards. Pujari should operate entirely under the supervision of temple president and GBC, not independently. The greatest danger to our movement will come when we manufacture and create our own process for worshiping the deities. So don't ask any more new questions. Whatever is going on, follow it just to the exact standard as I've given you. That's all. And the point of reading this letter basically is to point out that this is a very important fundamental point that Prabhupada is giving here. Do not manufacture anything. This is the same instruction Prabhupada gave in that letter to Sudama about the village roadshow. Now, there are many places around the world where they're inventing new mantras, new processes, some hatha yoga or a mango eating contest or some book glorifying Vivekananda, all kinds of things which were not introduced by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada is given the standard. There's no need of gimmicks or some kind of compromise nonsense. That will not help. That will not help the practice or preaching of Krishna consciousness. And these letters are very important in that connection. Hare Krishna, 829.
Venkat Prabhu, do we have any other questions on YouTube or in the chat that you might want to bring forward for us?
No, well, there was a question by another follow-up question, I guess, by Bhakta Hari Prasad Prabhu. So he says that there's this devotee on Facebook who seems to be propagating this concocted idea that if we don't chant 64 rounds, Lord Chaitanya won't accept the food we offer. I told him that our Acharya is Srila Prabhupada, and he has kept this standard of minimum 16 rounds. And if we stick to it, that is enough, because Srila Prabhupada is a Paramahamsa, and whatever rules he lays down, it'll be accepted by Lord Krishna. But this person does not seem to understand this. He always states Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's quotes, and in some way or other, he's indirectly undermining the position of Srila Prabhupada. That's the question.
Yaśodā Prabhu?
Well, this is an important point. Who are we going to follow? Prabhupada has demonstrated by his activities, by his preaching, by his books, that he was the empowered representative of Lord Chaitanya, the foremost disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Our duty as followers of Prabhupada is to listen to Prabhupada's instruction and try to apply it to the best of our ability. Now, if somebody gave instruction like 100 years ago, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, we don't disregard those instructions, but we have to look to Srila Prabhupada of how he applied those instructions. When devotees were in New York in 1966, Prabhupada requested the devotees to chant 64 rounds. When devotees brought to Prabhupada, that seemed to be very difficult. Prabhupada said, well, chant 32 rounds. And devotees even went back to Srila Prabhupada and says, that is also difficult. And Prabhupada says, you chant 16 rounds, at least chant 16 rounds. So this is a very important point. Prabhupada is the authorized Acharya. When we receive instruction from Srila Prabhupada, this is like Lord Chaitanya talking to us through His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. That is how we should understand this and follow it. Not that we try to circumvent or avoid Srila Prabhupada's instruction on the plea that Bhaktivedanta Thakur said this or Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that. That is not good. That is not proper. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. So tomorrow we'll have the Srimad Bhagavatam class at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time here on the East Coast of Canada and America. And along with that, a reading and discussion. So we very much appreciate everyone's participation in these classes. And I wanted to mention that at the beginning of the class, which is at 10 a.m., we are reading from the original diary of Srila Prabhupada in the beginning, where he is giving us some deep insights into how he personally was organizing himself to spread Krishna consciousness. And it gives us an insight for how we can also conduct our use of time daily in the spreading of Krishna consciousness and the practice of sadhana in our own personal lives. So thank you very much, everyone, for your attendance today. Very much appreciated, and for the discussion. And now we'll move to the kirtan from 1966 by Srila Prabhupada and the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivāsadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivāsadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivāsadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama
Vanchakalpa Trubhyascha
Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Thank you everybody for participating. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.